On May 23, 1999, the wrestling world witnessed the unthinkable, the fall of Owen Hart, lived during a WWF pay-per-view. Ever since that night, the theories haven't stopped. From claims of rigging failures to full-blown conspiracy talk, many of them led by Owen's widow, Martha Hart, who famously called Vince McMahon despicable.
And I can tell you that anyone that takes advantage of a vulnerable person is the most despicable type of person.
His daughter, Athena Hart, is now stepping forward with shocking revelations. And what she's saying, it's shaking the story all over again. So what exactly did Owen Hart's daughter reveal? And why are fans convinced WWE tried to cover up the truth behind his death? Let's get into it. The revelation.
The saddest day in wrestling for me. I don't know, maybe the Owen Hart thing. Maybe that. Because I had never heard of a professional wrestler dying in the ring before.
Owen Hart's death wasn't just one of the most heartbreaking moments in professional wrestling. It was one that shook the industry to its core. But beyond the sorrow, it also stirred up years of controversy. From safety failures to legal battles, many questions were left hanging. So when Dark Side of the Ring announced a full episode dedicated to Owen's story, fans were instantly hooked, especially when they heard that his daughter, Athena, would be breaking her silence. Born in Calgary in 1995, Athena Christie Hart was just 4 years old when her father died during a tragic stunt gone wrong. Despite growing up without him, Athena never let his memory fade. In the 2020 Vice documentary, Dark Side of the Ring, Athena shared personal memories of her father, notably recalling him taking her to the zoo, a tender reminder of the loving family man behind the high-flying wrestling character.
Him taking me to the zoo, that was like our thing. And I don't have very many memories, but that's like the one that's always stuck, and it's just, yeah, it makes me happy because the short time that we had together, that was my favorite.
These rare insights help humanize a wrestling legend who was known to millions of fans primarily through his television performances. Beyond these personal memories, Athena's life path itself speaks to her father's influence and her mother's guidance. Unlike many wrestling progeny, she pursued education and a career as an electrical engineer at Northrop Grumman, stepping away from the industry that claimed her father's life. This career choice reflects the Hart family's emphasis on education and professional pursuits outside the wrestling ring that has been championed by her mother, Martha. The circumstances surrounding Owen Hart's death on May 23, 1999, remain one of the most discussed and controversial topics in professional wrestling history. During the WWF's Over the Edge pay-per-view event at Kemper Arena in Kansas City, Owen was scheduled to make a superhero-style entrance from the rafters as his Blue Blazer character, a stunt he had performed before, though reportedly with some reluctance. Equipment failure led to a catastrophic 78-foot fall into the ring, resulting in injuries that would prove fatal. According to official reports, Owen died from internal bleeding caused by blunt force trauma, with his aorta severed upon impact. The accident occurred in front of thousands of stunned fans, though the fall itself was not broadcast on television as a pre-recorded video package was airing at the time. In the Dark Side of the Ring documentary, Martha Hart provided detailed insights into what she believes contributed to the tragedy. She has consistently maintained that WWF, now WWE, was negligent in their safety protocols, specifically pointing to the use of a quick-release harness system that she contends was inappropriate for such a stunt. They hired unqualified riggers, Martha explained in her various accounts of the incident, highlighting what she sees as cost-cutting measures that prioritize spectacle over safety. According to Martha's book, Broken Hearts: The Life and Death of Owen Hart, the company opted for a less secure nautical clip, rather than a full safety harness system. Perhaps most controversially, WWE made the decision to continue the pay-per-view event after Owen's fall, a choice that has been widely criticized decades since. Announcer Jim Ross informed the pay-per-view audience of Hart's death later in the broadcast, in what he has described as one of the most difficult moments of his broadcasting career. Vince McMahon, speaking in a recent Netflix documentary, Mr. McMahon, defended this decision, stating, "Those people came to see a show. They didn't come to see somebody die," a comment that has drawn significant criticism from the Hart family and wrestling fans alike. The show must go on mentality displayed that night has become emblematic of the wrestling industry's complicated relationship with performer safety and well-being. Following Owen's death, Martha Hart filed a wrongful death lawsuit against WWF, which was settled out of court for $18 million in 2000. This settlement funded the establishment of the Owen Hart Foundation, an organization dedicated to providing college scholarships and housing assistance for low-income families, continuing Owen's legacy of community support and generosity. Through this foundation, Athena has occasionally participated in events honoring her father's memory, though she generally maintains a private life life away from the media spotlight. The foundation represents Martha Hart's vision for preserving Owen's legacy, focused on charitable works rather than his wrestling career, which she has largely distanced from WWE and professional wrestling as a whole. The impact of Owen's death extended far beyond his immediate family. It sent shockwaves through the wrestling industry and led to increased scrutiny of safety protocols for high-risk stunts. Many wrestlers who worked with Owen have spoken about the profound effect his loss had on them personally and on locker room morale in the months that followed. Bret Hart, Owen's older brother and fellow wrestling legend, has been particularly vocal about the loss of his younger sibling. The tragedy occurred during an already contentious period between Bret and the WWF following the infamous Montreal Screwjob incident in 1997, when Bret left the company under controversial circumstances. In the Mr. McMahon documentary, Bret expressed his darkest thoughts regarding his brother's death, suggesting, "Maybe they murdered him to get back at me," a statement that reflects the profound grief and anger that has followed Owen's passing, though it appears to stem from emotional response rather than evidential basis. This family tragedy has created lasting ripples within the wrestling industry and the Hart family itself. Tensions between Martha Hart and some of Owen's siblings, particularly regarding how his legacy should be honored, have been reported over the years. Martha has remained steadfast in her refusal to allow WWE to induct Owen into their Hall of Fame, a position that has sometimes put her at odds with family members who feel differently about how Owen should be remembered within wrestling history. For Athena Hart, navigating this complex family history while establishing her own identity has undoubtedly been challenging. Growing up in the shadow of such a public tragedy, with ongoing legal battles and family disagreements as the backdrop, requires tremendous resilience. The path she has chosen, education, professional achievement, and a life largely separate from the wrestling world, speaks to that resilience. As we continue exploring this story in our next segment, we'll examine the theories and controversies that have emerged regarding Owen Hart's death over the years, controversies and theories surrounding Owen's death. The official account of Owen Hart's death points to equipment failure as the primary cause. However, numerous questions remain about the circumstances leading up to the tragedy and the decisions made that fateful night. Martha Hart has consistently maintained that WWE's negligence played a central role in her husband's death, particularly regarding the choice of equipment used for his stunt entrance. According to Martha's detailed accounts, the harness system used for Owen's descent was fundamentally unsuitable for the purpose. She has claimed that stunt coordinators had actually refused to test the equipment, deeming it crazy and unsafe. The quick-release mechanism, reportedly designed for sailing rather than theatrical stunts, has been a focal point of criticism in Martha's assessment of what went wrong. They hired hackers instead of riggers, Martha has stated in interviews over the years, suggesting that the company prioritized the ability to execute a quick-release effect over proper safety protocols. In her view, this decision directly contributed to the equipment failure that caused Owen's fatal fall. Former WWF announcer Kevin Kelly confirmed in a 2013 column that footage of the incident exists in the WWE archive in Stamford, Connecticut. According to Kelly, this footage is kept with strict instructions never to destroy, view, or duplicate, alongside footage of other serious wrestling incidents. The existence of this footage and WWE's tight control over it has fueled speculation about potential cover-ups, though the company's reluctance to release such sensitive material is understandable from multiple perspectives. Beyond questions of negligence, some have suggested more sinister explanations for Owen's death. As mentioned earlier, Bret Hart expressed his darkest fears in the Netflix documentary Mr. McMahon, wondering if his brother's death might have been retribution for his own contentious relationship with Vince McMahon following the Montreal Screwjob. "After Montreal happened, and after Owen died, I wondered if there was a connection," Bret stated, giving voice to the conspiracy theories that have circulated in certain corners of the wrestling community. It's important to note, however, that there is no concrete evidence supporting these claims, which appear to stem from the profound grief and anger that followed Owen's death rather than factual basis. Internet forums and social media platforms have occasionally hosted even more fringe theories, including suggestions of ritual sacrifice or broader conspiracies. Some believe that WWE attempted to control the narrative by limiting the dissemination of information related to Hart's death. The Over the Edge event was never commercially released, and while it became available on the WWE network years later, all footage of Hart was edited out. This selective presentation has led to accusations accusations of WWE trying to obscure details of the incident. Perhaps the most enduring controversy surrounding Owen Hart's death concerns WWE's decision to continue the over-the-edge pay-per-view after the accident. This choice has been debated extensively over the years, with many wrestling personalities and fans expressing shock and disapproval at what they perceived as callousness in the face of tragedy. These claims are widely dismissed as baseless by mainstream wrestling historians and journalists, lacking any credible evidence. They represent the extreme end of the speculation that often surrounds high-profile tragedies in entertainment. Vince McMahon addressed this decision in the Netflix documentary, stating, "Those people came to see a show. They didn't come to see somebody die," and claimed that the apparatus was defective, placing blame on the manufacturer. This explanation has done little to quell criticism, with many, including Bret Hart, questioning whether the show would have continued had it been a McMahon family member who had fallen. The controversy extends beyond the night of the tragedy itself. Martha Hart has been vocal in her criticism of WWE's subsequent handling of Owen's image and legacy. She has taken legal action to prevent WWE from using Owen's likeness in various contexts, including video games and DVD collections, and has steadfastly opposed his induction into the WWE Hall of Fame. "I would never let Owen's name or image be used by WWE to promote their company," Martha has stated, highlighting her belief that the organization bears responsibility for her husband's death and should not profit from his legacy. This position has occasionally created tension with other members of the Hart family who feel differently about how Owen should be remembered within wrestling history. To provide broader context for understanding Owen Hart's tragic accident, it's worth looking at similar incidents in professional wrestling and related performance fields. While his death remains a singular event in wrestling history, being the only known case of a wrestler dying from a fall during a live stunt, there have been other heartbreaking in-ring fatalities that underscore the dangers of the profession. One of the earliest modern examples is Malcolm Kirk, a British wrestler who died in 1987. Known as King Kong Kirk, he collapsed in the ring after receiving a splash from his opponent, Big Daddy. Kirk suffered a massive heart attack and was later pronounced dead. The match was being performed in front of a live crowd, making the moment all the more haunting. In 1993, Oro, a promising Mexican wrestler, died during a match in Mexico City. After taking a seemingly routine bump, he collapsed and never regained consciousness. Doctors later determined he had suffered a brain aneurysm. It was a chilling reminder that even basic in-ring moves can sometimes turn fatal. Just 6 years later, in 1999, Japanese wrestler Emiko Kato suffered a severe head injury during a tag team match. Though she managed to finish the bout, she collapsed backstage and was rushed to the hospital. 10 days later, she passed away due to brain trauma. She had only recently debuted, making the loss even more tragic. In April 2000, another Japanese wrestler, Masakazu Fukuda, took a flying elbow drop during a match and later died from a brain hemorrhage. He had previously suffered a subdural hematoma, raising concerns about whether he had returned to the ring too soon. Perhaps one of the most well-known modern tragedies occurred in 2015 when Perro Aguayo Jr. died during a tag team match involving Rey Mysterio. Aguayo took a drop kick and landed awkwardly on the ropes, becoming unresponsive. For several moments, the match continued, as no one realized the severity of his condition. He was later pronounced dead from cervical spine trauma. Then, in 2019, the wrestling world was stunned again by the death of Silver King, a Mexican luchador and actor who famously played Ramses in Nacho Libre. He collapsed mid-match in London due to a heart attack and died in the ring. Many spectators believed his collapse was part of the act, highlighting the blurred lines between performance and reality in wrestling. More recently, in March 2025, independent wrestler Vince Steele, known to fans as the Jurassic Juggernaut, suffered a cardiac event during a match in Ridgefield Park, New Jersey. Despite immediate medical intervention, he passed away shortly after, shocking fans and colleagues alike. While none of these cases involved a fatal fall from a great height like Owen Hart's, they all underscore the ever-present dangers that come with the world of professional wrestling. Yet, to fully grasp the scale and type of risks performers like Owen faced, it's worth stepping outside the wrestling ring. In fact, there are striking parallels in other performance realms, most notably in the circus. In circus arts, performers routinely engage in high-risk aerial stunts, and tragically, several have lost their lives in ways that closely mirror the circumstances surrounding Owen's fatal accident, falls from significant heights in front of live audiences with little to no margin for error. Some of these heartbreaking cases include Yann Arnault, who fell during a Cirque du Soleil performance in 2018, plummeting 20 feet during an aerial straps act in Tampa, Florida, and later dying from his injuries. Sarah Guillar-Gilos, who fell 90 feet to her death during a Cirque du Soleil show in 2013, dying from blunt force trauma during an aerial battle scene in Las Vegas. Desi Espana, who fell 30 feet during a Ringling Brothers performance in 2004, 2004, suffering fatal injuries during an aerial silks act in St. Paul, Minnesota. Eva Garcia, who fell 30 feet during a Hippodrome Circus act in 2003, dying from injuries sustained during an aerial silks performance in England. These tragic parallels highlight the inherent risks of aerial performances and the catastrophic consequences when safety measures fail. They also provide important context for understanding the Hart family's ongoing quest for accountability and closure in the wake of Owen's death. For Athena Hart, growing up in the shadow of these controversies and theories has undoubtedly shaped her perspective on her father's legacy. While she has largely maintained privacy regarding her views on these matters, her participation in the Dark Side of the Ring documentary suggests a desire to ensure her father is remembered as more than just a tragic figure or the subject of wrestling conspiracy theories. By sharing personal memories of Owen as a loving father who took her to the zoo, Athena helped humanize him beyond the circumstances of his death or his wrestling persona. These recollections serve as a poignant reminder that behind the headlines, legal battles, and industry controversies was a real person whose loss continues to be felt deeply by those who loved him. Legacy and remembrance. The most tangible manifestation of Owen Hart's legacy is the foundation established in his name by his widow Martha. The Owen Hart Foundation, funded by the $18 million settlement from the wrongful death lawsuit against WWE, has become a vehicle for channeling Owen's spirit of generosity into concrete community benefits. The foundation focuses on providing housing for low-income families and educational opportunities for underprivileged students, causes that reflect the values Owen embodied during his lifetime. Through scholarships, housing programs, and various charitable initiatives, the foundation ensures that Owen's impact extends far beyond the wrestling ring, touching the lives of people who may never have seen him perform. For Martha Hart, this foundation represents the appropriate way to honor her husband's memory, focused on helping others rather than celebrating his wrestling career, which ended in such tragic circumstances. It also provides a way for Owen's children, Athena and her brother Ohe, to connect with their father's legacy in a positive, forward-looking manner. While Athena Hart has maintained a largely private life, her occasional participation in foundation events offers glimpses into how she has chosen to honor her father's memory. By supporting the foundation's work, she contributes to ensuring that Owen is remembered not just for how he died, but for the positive impact his life continues to have through charitable works done in his name. The tragedy of Owen Hart's death also catalyzed important changes in wrestling safety protocols. While high-risk stunts remain part of professional wrestling, there has been increased scrutiny of safety measures following Owen's accident. Many wrestlers have cited his death as a turning point in how the industry approaches performer safety. Former WWE wrestler Mick Foley, known for his own high-risk style, has spoken about how Owen's death affected his perspective on dangerous stunts. The incident served as a sobering reminder of the real risks wrestlers take for entertainment and the responsibility promotions have to minimize those risks through proper safety measures. Despite these positive developments, tensions remain regarding how Owen Hart should be remembered within wrestling history. Martha Hart has been steadfast in her opposition to WWE's involvement in preserving Owen's legacy, including preventing his induction into the WWE Hall of Fame. This position has occasionally created friction with other Hart family members who feel differently about Owen's place in wrestling's pantheon. Bret Hart, in particular, has expressed his belief that Owen deserves recognition in the WWE Hall of Fame, viewing it as an appropriate honor for his brother's contributions to the industry. This difference of opinion highlights the complex emotions surrounding Owen's wrestling career and the company that employed him when he died. For Athena and her brother Ohe, navigating these family tensions while forming their own relationships with their father's memory has required tremendous resilience. Growing up without their father, they have had to piece together their understanding of who he was from family stories, video footage, and the accounts of those who knew him, all while being aware of the controversial circumstances of his death. What makes Owen Hart's story particularly poignant is the contrast between his in-ring persona and his private life. Known for his technical wrestling skills and later for comedic characters like the Blue Blazer, Owen was widely regarded by colleagues as one of the most genuine, kind-hearted individuals in the wrestling business. His reputation as a devoted family man who prioritized returning home to his wife and children whenever possible stands in stark contrast to the stereotypical image of professional wrestlers. This duality between the performer who entertained millions and the family man who treasured moments at the zoo with his daughter makes the tragedy of his early death all the more affecting. It also helps explain Martha Hart's Hart's determination to ensure that her husband is remembered primarily as a loving father and generous person, rather than solely as a wrestling figure. For Athena Hart, now an adult with her own career and life path, the shadow of her father's death remains a part of her story. Yet through her work as an electrical engineer and her occasional participation in foundation events, she demonstrates that there is life beyond tragedy, that while her father's death will always be part of her narrative, it doesn't define her entirely. The story of Owen Hart and his family reminds us of the human cost behind entertainment industries that involve physical risk. While audiences marvel at death-defying stunts and spectacular entrances, real people with families and futures are putting their bodies on the line. Owen's death stands as a stark reminder that sometimes the risks taken for our entertainment have consequences, far more devastating than we could imagine. It also highlights the complexity of grief and remembrance, how different family members may have different, sometimes conflicting views on how a loved one should be honored. There is no single right way to remember Owen Hart. His legacy is multifaceted, encompassing his wrestling career, his family life, and the charitable works now done in his name. For wrestling fans who remember Owen Hart's performances, for circus performers who understand the risks of aerial acts, and for families who have experienced sudden tragic loss, his story resonates on different but equally powerful levels. 25 years after his passing, the conversations about safety, corporate responsibility, and appropriate memorialization continue. In the words of Martha Hart, Owen did not die in vain. His story, tragic though it is, has created positive change and continues to touch lives through the work of those who loved him most. For Athena Hart, navigating this complex legacy while building her own life represents a quiet courage worthy of her father's memory. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed watching this video, click on one of the boxes playing on your screen to watch more similar content.